that was so fucking scary to me. Am I going to be one of those women in 2019 that fucking dies during childbirth?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to bleed out here?
We used to be kids. Now we're not. Something happened in between. This is the Broken Youth Club.
Yeah, so Jen and I grew up in a house that had one bathroom. And because she's older and I'm younger, I did everything I possibly could to annoy her always. So pretty much anytime you would go into the bathroom, I would immediately need to go. Whether I needed to go or not, didn't matter.
Frantic. Not like a tap tap. It was like a
bang, bang, let me in.
Okay.
And one time she just like held strong. She was like, no, I absolutely am not going to get out of here. But I actually did, in fact, need to shit.
It was the boy who cried wolf. But it was a situation.
Yeah. And I mean, I had to have been what, like 12?
Old enough.
Old enough.
Yeah.
And so instead, I had to run outside, and my parents had like an old clothesline outside. And so I grabbed onto it and took my pants completely off and like pooped right there. And like, you know where that clothesline is, Logan. It's
Dude,
like
it's literally like 15 feet from the front door.
very close. Very
Keep
close
in mind,
to the
we
door.
have a whole like, forest behind us. That
Yeah, we have 5.5 acres at
she
that
could have
house.
like hidden.
Yeah, no, I won't. In fact, so you're gonna watch me.
Okay.
But I thought I was all good, and so I go out there to do that, and she in fact didn't need to go to the bathroom. And as soon as she heard that I was actually gonna go outside, she runs out with my parents' like fucking camcorder or something. I don't even know. I'm surprised we even owned something.
It was it was mine.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
No, it was mine.
So anyway, she's coming out and filming me while I'm taking a giant shit in the yard. And then I didn't bring toilet paper out. And she, of course, wasn't going to be helpful.
Sure.
So I go inside to clean myself up. And then I come back outside, and Sam, our giant sheepdog that I talked about in the last episode, was eating my shit that I had just laid
It's bad.
in the yard. And I am so hopeful that nobody ever finds that tape, because the thought of that tape has crossed my mind so many times.
Yeah. And it's like, honestly, I know exactly where those tapes are because I've moved so many times, especially in the past 3 years, that like I have a bag, and it's like one of those like craft like paper bags.
No.
And it's full of all my tapes, and I have a log. So my goal is to like digitize them.
No.
But
I'm so curious because I feel like I remember not enjoying the fact that you were recording, but I would love to know what my actual reaction was whenever you come out of that door with a fucking camcorder
I don't
glued to your
remember you
hands.
being horrified enough. Let's say that. I can imagine I'd be way more horrified.
I'm a little surprised I didn't make you immediately pop it into the VCR so I could watch it.
Yeah. So that's one of the many treasure troves that I have.
If you ever find it, please send it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I want to see it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So yeah.
Maybe I'll bring it for Christmas.
Oh, wow. What a treat. Hey, Saichin, it's me. This is my house. Here's me shitting in the fucking yard. Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Yeah. So, yeah, anyone listening can tell there is a third person in studio today,
This
which
is a special episode.
so strange. We didn't necessarily like plan for this to happen, but Jen is in town for a very different thing that we're going to talk about at the end of the episode. And so we just thought maybe it'd be cool to bring her in and get a third person's perspective on the email we were going to read today.
Okay.
So, yeah. Do we need to like say anything about Jen as a human?
Well, yeah. Why don't you introduce
She's
her?
older than me first. Let's start there. She's older than me. A lot of people seem to think
67.
Yes. A lot of people
Much
seem
older.
to think Jen is younger than me, which feels rude, but it's just because I've had 3 kids and I'm tired all the time. And Jen gets to live her life exactly how she wants to with her husband. And she is well rested and I'm not. So she's older. Okay. But yeah, what else would you like to say about yourself?
Ooh. Well, I think probably my favorite thing about our relationship, I mean, we have like a really fun relationship, but I think my favorite thing about my relationship with both of you guys is that you've given me the best little nephews.
Oh, yeah.
And it took me a long time to find my partner, Saichin. And so I just kept like dating and thinking like I could never have kids with any of these people. And so I just, it kind of felt like out of reach for me to like even have the thought of having kids. And so your kids became like even more so than a typical, I feel like, aunt and nephew relationship. I was just like,
yeah,
they're mine.
Yeah. Which is like such a blessing because I know that even though we have never lived in the same place since I've had kids, which is
crazy.
A total bummer. I do know that like realistically, I could always get you to watch the kids, whether it was like when you lived in Nashville and we lived in Indiana and we could just like run them over to you. Or even now I was like, I just asked you today if Logan and I ever wanted to go on a trip, could we just drop the kids with you? And you without a beat, you were like, oh yeah, for sure. And now I'm like mad that we haven't actually done that yet.
Yeah.
So we need to put it on the calendar.
Yeah. So I think like one of my, I think anyone who has a sibling, and it's, I don't know, like, I guess most people probably don't have the experience we've had where you guys dated for so long. And like, I knew Logan when he was like a kid. And I don't know, there's like a difference in a relationship as soon as like, for us, like when Ollie was born, it was like, I looked at Logan differently because he was now like, you were a part of our family, but now you were like,
definitely not going anywhere.
You are a part of our family. And I got to see like you guys in such an intimate space. Like I was there when you had Ollie and I was there when you took him home. And so it's just been like a really fun season. And yeah. And now it's like weird because you guys, even though I am older, you guys have done a lot of like the adult things before me. Like you bought a house before me, you had kids before me, you got married. And so it's like now I'll probably, and I hope Sech and I can have kids. I'll be calling you and being like, what does it mean when there's a butt rash? Like, when's a butt rash too bad? Or like, what is this? How do you break a fever or whatever? So
a lot of my solutions to those things are probably not things you're going to want to follow anyway. Because I'm like, I think it's fine. They're fine. You know?
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see like what Seichen's perspective is on a lot of that stuff, just because he was raised in like a completely different culture. So
yeah.
I'm excited. Like when you told me that Seichen was coming over for like just a good American Christmas morning. And out here, we're pretty guaranteed to have snow.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we'll have that element of it. Yeah.
That and like the kids. I mean, Seichen's been here for like how many years? Almost 10?
So no, you guys, it was funny. I heard your last episode where you were saying like 10 or 15. He's only been here, I think, for like 8 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm also terrible with dates, but I think it's like more like 8 years. So yeah, newer and has definitely like been adjacent to a Christmas, but definitely not with like a big, like with kids. And we almost got him to your house that first year.
Yeah.
That we were dating. I think he came like the day after or something. But yeah. So it'd be fun. I'm excited. The kids love him. He loves the kids. He's obsessed with the kids. Like, so it'll be really fun.
Which I think is such a it's like an immediate like bonus point on someone's character when they don't have kids and they're in their mid-30s, but they really love to be around kids.
Yeah.
Because like I used to really like kids when I was little, and I don't know if it's getting older or if it's because I have my own, but it's like I like kids, but I'll just like them a little less. You know what I mean? Like I'm less likely to just want to babysit other people's kids. Like I got enough. And if I don't have my kids, I don't want your kids. You know what I mean? But yeah, so that I'm super excited for Seichen to come out and like, especially because we don't have family around us now. We like try to really hit all of the milestones at Christmas time now. So like we do the sledding, we do the snowmen, we do the gingerbread houses, we bake cookies.
This is like Christmas boot camp for
really
Seichen.
Try to live it up.
Yeah, like get in here and do all the things.
Yeah. So it'll be cool. But last thing before we get into the email for today, Logan and I have talked a couple of times about Logan's Hey There CD. Do you remember when you were living in Atlanta and I came for Thanksgiving and I actually ruined that trip for you for a related but separate reason?
I do remember that.
Do you remember?
Not a great family Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
Do you?
What are you referring to? You guys are laughing so hard. You got to let people in on what you're laughing about.
It's terrible.
I let it slip on that trip that you and I had experimented orally.
Yeah.
And
I don't think really anybody at the family dinner table was ready for that.
Yeah.
And Jen was quite displeased with that advancement in our activity.
I shouldn't want to know about it.
You were upset. You did not. But anyway, do you remember the CD? Do you remember me playing it for you guys?
No, I think I was still shy.
You were too pissed. You were like, fuck this dude.
I think I was just like...
Okay, fair enough. I'll have to play it for you so you can hear it again because it's actually...
You don't have to.
I definitely have to play it again. It's so cute. Oh my God. I'm still working on it, you guys. It'll be on the Patreon.
I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, man. Okay, so it's been a while since we have read an email, so I thought I would get into that. This one is really long, so forgive me for any blunders that I have whenever I'm reading through it. Feeling a little chapped. My lips are chapped, which makes me like sad that I'm probably going to be a little like mouth clacky. Yeah.
That's
okay.
right.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. All right.
We're ready.
Okay, go for it.
This may jump around a bit, so buckle down. In 2016, my wife and I got married. About 9 months later, we made the decision to move from Memphis, Tennessee to Detroit, Michigan. Her family's from Michigan, while all I've ever known and loved, mostly family and friends, have been in the South. Even though I was completely on board with moving, I still hurt, obviously, to say goodbye to everyone I had met and loved and then move 12 hours away. Note, this did put a strain on my already strained relationship with my side of the family. At first, we lived on a mattress in a basement with our 2 cats and dog. Luckily, we moved in with some of her family, but it was still uncomfortable. We both got jobs with great benefits, decent pay, and we bought our first Midwestern home. Fast forward to April 2021, my wife gives birth to our beautiful, amazing son in the middle of the COVID pandemic. We were locked down in the hospital for 6 days when we were expecting and packed to be there for 4. There was a lot of misinformation from the hospital staff that honestly kind of could have been a lot of damage to both my wife and my son. I'm going to spare a lot of the details, but if you'd like, I can send you a link to my wife's TikTok where she did a series telling her side of this. After a lot of frustration and complications, we finally left on the 6th day. 3 months after our son was born, one of my brothers passed away. Even though it was kind of expected, he had been hospitalized after getting hit by a car months before, had been in a coma at one point, had a hole put in his throat to help breathe, etc. It hit me harder than I expected. He was my favorite sibling. We both played guitar, loved music, basketball, smoking weed, playing games, etc. He was the only sibling that I, to be honest, actually enjoyed hanging out with. I, for some reason, decided not to travel down south for the funeral. I didn't want to leave my wife and still pretty new kid at home, and I just didn't want to face the truth that he had passed. My mom and another brother sent me pics of his house as he had several guitars and let me pick one to keep. I ended up getting his ESP Kirk Hammett Ouija signature guitar, Fender tube amp, some pedals, a couple guitar straps, one signed by Paul Reed Smith and one signed by Buddy Guy, and a B.B. King signed poster. I'm only mentioning all of this because I feel like the musician in Logan would appreciate how cool my brother was.
That's some pretty good stuff.
Like, dude became friends with B.B. King before he passed, was gifted a Lucille from B.B., had a pic with him that I luckily got a copy of, etc.
Wow.
3 months later, I got the worst phone call of my life while I was at work. One of my brothers had called me, again, strained relationship, and rarely talked to each other, so I knew it couldn't be good, and said, "You might need to sit down. I'm at work. What's up?" Dad's gone. I broke down at work immediately. This was my stepdad, technically. Honestly, the only solid parental figure I had in my eyes. My mom was addicted to gambling. It's how she made her money. She didn't have a job. So she never showed up to any of my shows when I did solo acoustic acts, never came to marching band, concert band, or jazz performances, competitions, etc. Our bio dad never came around pretty much because of his failed relationship with our mom, or at least that's what he told me when he tried to make amends before we moved. Anyway, I went home from work. My wife and son were shopping with her mom. When I was on the way home, she asked me if I wanted them to come home or if I wanted to have a moment alone. I got home and fell to my knees and cried and screamed. like the kind of scream that you'd imagine in a movie or a show, just wailing, shaking, sobbing, white noise. I felt like in the midst of this cry, I felt something snap and change within me. Something broke. I also realized that my son would never meet the greatest grandpa. This realization breaks my heart every day. Around this time, childhood trauma had resurfaced that I had pushed deep, never told anyone. With the recent deaths, I knew I'd have to get this out or it could possibly ruin me. I decided to tell my wife the next day. I remember putting on my time suck digital dream tee, thinking Nimrod be with me and the cult has my back. I mean, it does literally say Cult of the Curious on the back. And I went into the living room. She could immediately tell something was off, asked what was wrong. Tears filled my eyes and I felt like I had a frog in my throat. I decided to type it all out and let her read it. Well, y'all, here it goes. When I was around 7 or 8, my parents got divorced. My mom moved out, leaving our dad with this new house that he rarely stayed in. The house pretty much became abandoned with us in it. Still had electricity and water, but we were kids and didn't clean it or keep up with it. And it had dog shit all over the house. My 2 eldest siblings had a neighborhood friend that one of them was in a band with and hung out with all the time. We looked up to this friend, thought he was cool, and of course wanted his approval. Quick note, how the siblings were the oldest, 1 year difference to the second sibling, 9 years difference to the third, so 10 years between the 2 blonde blue eyes, and 1 year difference to me, so 10 years difference between the brown hair, brown hazel eyes. One day this friend and the second oldest sibling, 10 years older than me, were at the house wrestling with us. We were huge into WWF at the time. They'd just slam us into the couch. Hanging out, whatever. Well, this friend was bored, I guess, and convinced the third sibling, 1 year older, and me to strip and urinate on each other as him and my second oldest sibling laughed. The second sibling would also beat us younger 2 brothers a lot of this time. I remember him trying to smother the younger one with a pillow several times. I never told anyone this until I told my wife, and now Broken Youth Club, because I was embarrassed and honestly felt like we weren't molested or raped so it didn't matter or couldn't consider it abuse since we agreed to it as they bribed us with a fucking video game demo, not even a full game. How fucked up for them to bribe a little kid to do this shit for their amusement. How fucked up for our brother to stand there and not stop his friend from asking us to do it. I've tried to bring it up to the younger brother and he denies everything. It never happened. Shut up. Never brought it up to the second oldest. Obviously, my wife was horrified and gave a lot of fuck them. At the end of the long talk, we both agreed that I needed to get therapy at this point. Both life and work had been crumbling my mental state, and to better myself and hopefully ensure I could give my best to both my wife and my son, I completely agreed. This email is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sadly, I could only afford about 3 months of it, but I was completely honest and got as much as I could out within this time. A few months later, one of our fur babies, my wife's cat, passed. She was the favorite of the 3 animals, and it broke our hearts. Almost exactly a year later, my cat suddenly passed. I believe animal lovers and pet owners have at least one soul pet, like a soulmate, but your furry friend. This cat was my soul pet. This fucking hurt. I lost my best friend. The furry fat fuck, lovingly, was always in my lap, sleeping next to me or on me. He was always there. In the middle and after both of these pet deaths, there were many breakdowns. There were many times I felt like I was at my breaking point. I didn't know how much more pain I could take. My wife, even though she was hurting and breaking down too, picked me back up. She's always been my rock, and I always try to be hers when I can. She hasn't seen me at my highest, with dreams and shit, but she's certainly seen me at my lowest. I know it broke her to watch her husband deteriorate his mental health over and over again. I thank her every day for all the love and support she continues to show me and our son, of course. Fast forward to today, I've left a toxic workplace to go to 2 different places and find out the grass isn't always greener. I'd rather go work with some of my best friends that work at a place that is toxic, but the positives outweigh the negatives at this point. Focus on my dreams and have some sort of mental peace. Started a podcast with my brother-in-law a few months ago, and have loved every moment of it. One day, the third sibling texted me out of the blue and said, I heard you podcast. I podcast as well. And then went on to show me a screenshot video of him scrolling through all of their episodes and trying to brag about it. Well, let's say it's a good old boys, very one-sided, it seems, kind of podcast, and not my cup of tea. I listened to a random episode and happened to hear a story that he told about me where he and his asshole friend convinced me to do something for their entertainment when we were all teens. So needless to say, I won't be listening. My podcast started doing episodes twice a week on Twitch, and here's the kicker. The second sibling tunes in every week and is in the chat. Now, since on my pod, we talk about trauma and childhood memories, while we also talk about other stuff, not plugging anything, so I'm not mentioning what the names of mine or his podcasts are. But wouldn't it be something if I ended up mentioning trauma that he gave to me? Love everything you guys do. Love hearing the dynamic between you two. After hearing so much about Kate from the Bad Magic podcast, I'm so happy to get to hear from her. You two are amazing people. You're amazing together and truly inspirational.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sending that in. Yeah, I feel like I want to immediately say after all these, like, that's a lot.
I know.
I know. And I have a hard time straddling that line of like, I don't want to give like advice, but other than I'm glad that you're hanging in there and you seem to be on the right path as of right now. So, but yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. I felt like when I read through it, I immediately could kind of just like relate to a lot of things in it. So I think just starting with like the move.
Yeah.
All of us have moved from home. I know for us, it's been hard in a lot of ways and good in other ways. And we've talked about that a lot, but like, I don't feel like I know that it was hard for you to be gone, especially once I started having the kids. But like, I feel like before that, I always just assumed you really liked it because you had like a cool job and you were like so independent. Like I thought you just kind of were like living the dream. But I think I wasn't obviously like probably thinking about some of the harder parts of it for you too.
Yeah. So I moved straight out of college, actually a little bit before I was done with college, to Nashville and did an internship and then stayed there for about a year. And then I think about a year and a half later, I moved to Atlanta, which was substantially further away from our home. So at that point I was like 8 hours away, which is like not a big deal for a drive, but I was only there 6 months total. And I think maybe the first month I was there, the first week I was there, I got robbed. I came home in the middle of the day to get my mattress delivered while we were being robbed by this man.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, Dad always said I'm book smart, but I am like, you don't feel like a street dummy.
Yeah.
And so I literally like parked next to the person robbing us and was like, damn, that guy is like, that must have been like a bad breakup. Like, I mean, at this point, like cookie sheets were coming out of the apartment. So I didn't recognize any of the stuff because I had moved in with a friend who was already living there. I hadn't moved much of my stuff because I didn't have a lot. But he'd already gotten all my worldly possessions, like my Nintendo out, and was like down to our friggin' cookie sheets. Like, who steals those? So anyways, the guy watches me walk up to the door, takes off, and then I like realize our door's unlocked and I walk in and like,
oh gosh,
all of our stuff's gone. And, it was bad. He like had seen my car, he had seen me. So we had to like literally leave we had to move out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was bad. We had to live with my friend's boss for a little bit. So that was like my intro to Atlanta. And then I swear it was like 2 months later, Mom had that freak thing happen. I don't even know what it was that burst inside of her.
Her appendix. Oh my gosh, that was so crazy.
Dude, talk about like some trauma for you. I felt so bad because at that point I'm gone. I'm like, just because I was 5.5 years older than you, I stayed home with you like during the summers and stuff. I was like kind of responsible for you or whatever. So it was like I was used to more of like a caregiver position, even though I was way more afraid of everything than you. But like you had to take on so much of that because that was before cell phones were like super common. Like our parents didn't.
Yeah,
Dad
mom
didn't
and
have one.
Yeah, mom and I shared one.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, which I think it was the only way that mom could like let me have one and it not make dad mad, because dad was very much like, well, you can't have one until Jen got one.
Oh, yeah.
Dad is like the fair parent. And mom was like, but she's driving and all of her friends have it. So we like shared one, but it was shit.
I remember I still had to use a payphone when I was in high school. Like, volleyball practice got done early. So anyways, it was like this big traumatic thing where mom's like felt sick, didn't go to the doctor. And then basically it was like knocking on death's door. And
I drove her to the doctor's office in Gosport, Indiana. And they took one look at her and they were like, get her to the hospital now. I can't believe they didn't call an ambulance. I'm only assuming mom probably told them, I'll just take her because they didn't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
But like, we got to the hospital and she had to have like immediate emergency surgery.
Yeah.
And then she said that when they like cut her open, she literally like squirted out like so much had just like.
Yeah, she was like, I don't know if she's going septic or what, but it was bad.
Really bad.
Yeah, I remember someone saying like if she had waited another like half hour, like she would have died.
Yeah.
And it was like, so I'm 8 hours then feels like an eternity. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm at work. I get this call and it's bad. I mean, you're sobbing. Dad gets on the phone with me. I know what it was. You said at one point, hey, I just heard dad talking to the doctor and they were like, you may not want to leave tonight. She may not make it. Like,
fuck. Why would I say that to you?
You told it to me. And I was literally at that point on a plane. My roommate had like found a flight for me home and I'm like sitting on the plane and it's like about to take off. And you tell me that, I'm like, oh my God. Like it was, dude, terrible. So yeah, like I can sympathize with moving away and it not being like the smoothest transition. And then, you miss out on, I think, just being close to people when they need you. So like similar to this person, it's like, the idea of things happening to your family, to people who for a chunk of your life, like you saw them day in, day out, like you saw their highs, you saw their lows, like that's a thing to not be in close proximity to them.
Yeah.
When that kind of stuff happens.
When I thought too, whenever he mentioned his brother passing, and immediately made me think of when we first moved out here, your grandma, which was the last living grandparent that you had, was not well. And we kind of knew when we were leaving that was likely us saying goodbye to her also for forever.
Yeah.
And then we were out here for what, like a couple months. And then she...
Oh, I don't even know. She died when we were on our way out here.
Oh, really?
Do you not remember that? It was
well, I just
on
remember
the drive
it was
out
like
here.
it was so soon after we got out here that it was like, we can't even turn around and go back. Yeah. Like we didn't have the money. We had spent so much money to like move ourselves out here. And then we were still carrying the mortgage back home for, a year and a half.
Yeah,
or so.
but I do remember that feeling of like it just sinking in because she had her hospital bed in the living room. And I said my goodbyes, like you said, like, I know this is going to be the last time I get to speak to her. But then that, like, you just look over your shoulder and then you walk to the door and then out of sight. And then that's it. That is the threshold of like, that's the last time I will ever see this person. Because I knew, we were like literally the next day or a couple days later, we were headed out. So it's that. I can sympathize on the fact that, you lose someone who means a lot to you, but I haven't lost a parent yet.
Yeah.
I haven't lost
a sibling,
a sibling or a spouse, like I haven't had, I think that deep connection. Yeah. Again, the closest would be, my grandparents, I would say. And
I feel like all of the loss that we have suffered have been losses that you almost expect, right? Like you expect to not have your grandparents live your whole life. We haven't had our parents are still alive. So we don't have like a parent that has died young. We don't even think about our siblings dying because what if that's us, like we are
not allowed.
No, the fuck.
Right.
So it's like all the loss that we haven't even had like a really, really close friend pass. So it's like, we just haven't been hit with that big.
No, we did have, so when I came back from Atlanta, shortly I mean, I didn't even finish out my lease in Atlanta. It was a long time after that, but we had then another time that you called me, and it was one of those classic, like, are you sitting down? And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And Dad was in the hospital and had that heart. He was in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. So that was another time that I was driving home and was just like, am I gonna make it there to even get to say goodbye?
Yeah. Well, and that was so scary too. I remember, so that was when we were living in Spencer, and Arla was new. And Mom called me and she was hysterical. And she was like, Kate, your dad's in an ambulance. He just had a heart attack. And she's like, that's when she like broke, right? She's just like, and I'm like panicked, dude, like immediately shaking my hearts. Cause like I hear heart attack and I think like, oh, people don't survive that, you know, like, or, oh, that's a big deal. I'm like, not our dad, you know, like.
Well, I mean, our dad's like a mountain man.
Yeah.
He looks like a mountain man.
There's like, no way. Like, there's no way. And I just remember being so frantic in that moment. I'm like, immediately scream at Logan, we have to get in the car. We have to get in the car. We have to get in the car. And like rush over. And I asked Mom on the phone, I was like, did you call Jen? Do you need me to call Jen? And she was like, yeah, will you call her? I didn't call her yet. And that was like a really hard phone call to make for you because I didn't have all the information yet. And I knew you would ask questions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's going to ask stuff that I just don't know.
That's like my way of like having some sense of control in an out of control situation is like, okay, like I need to just document what do we know?
Yeah.
What's being done? Like, what's the plan of action? Like, it's very like methodical in my brain. Like, because that's the only way I can like wrap my head around something that just seems so like, what? Like,
which is so, it was one of those like moments for me where it was so evident of like how differently we maneuver through shit, because I was so panicked and hysterical and like one track, get in the car, we have to go. And I called you and I remember like saying it and you were just like, okay. And then you just started asking questions. You were like so calm about it where I'm like,
well, then I got in the car and was like stupidly driving, like doing that thing, you know, like the hysterical, like.
But I just remember feeling so bad. It was like, I wish in that moment I could have like, the thought wasn't even, I wish that she could just be here. My thought was, I wish I could be with her to then make the drive with her, because I knew like I'm 30 minutes from the hospital with my husband and my kids and I'm frantic and I can't imagine.
And I'm 4 hours with my dog sobbing in the car.
Like, oh,
Benji in the front seat. Like,
and it was like, I knew you were also going to be driving like at night. I feel like this was like late afternoon-ish when it had happened, almost around dinner time. Yeah. And so it was just like,
I feel like I remember having a true, like a disbelief. Of like, I didn't panic at all for whatever reason. I had a like, nah there's no way.
That's not true.
No way. I'll believe it when I see it. You know, and I didn't panic. And I don't know if that was just like,
it's a good thing you didn't.
A shock almost, you know?
Yeah. Maybe you just recognized that would have been so incredibly unhelpful to me that you were like, oh, God.
No. I mean, I definitely like as time passed, you know, as, you know, the 5 minutes turned into a half hour, into 2 hours, like, definitely started to sink in of like, oh, you know, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But I definitely still like, overall, I feel like I remember just having this feeling of like, no, he'll be fine. He'll be all right. And
I mean, our dad was like the dad that literally also never got sick.
Never.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we didn't get to see that. I didn't want to, but we didn't see that side of our dad. Like, we could all be down with a stomach bug in the house growing up, and Dad'd be like,
get up, go to work. Didn't matter. Like,
chopping wood.
Yeah, chopping wood by hand, no matter what. Still at 66 years old. Like, like he just was, he felt so invincible. So when that happened, I'm like, I immediately go to this place of like, my dad never gets sick. So for this to happen, it's gonna, like, my brain went to bad. And like, I was so thankful that like, even though your mom, Logan, your mom and I, like, we weren't in a like great spot, your mom worked at the hospital. So I could like, when we got to the waiting room and Mom was talking to like whoever was, you know, the nurse or whatever, that was running the floor at that moment, your mom like came up and asked who the surgeon was like, oh my gosh, he's so great. Like, was really comforting in that time. And then because you weren't there, even though I think it would have normally been your role to like call and tell people, Mom was too hysterical to call anybody. So then I had to call Grandpa Bates, like my dad's dad. I had to call the aunts, and every single one of them, when I first said he's okay, but my dad had a heart attack, all of them were like, Neil? Yeah. Like, Neil had a heart attack?
Yeah, sure.
Like, are you calling the right person? Like, it was so, because and everything that has happened to our dad since then, on the aspect of just like, he has never been the same health-wise. Like, felt like that took a lot out of him. And now I'm just like, I think also having like Arlo and having that postpartum anxiety, now I'm just like, every phone call from them, I'm like, is everything okay?
And like literally also like mom is not great sometimes when she calls. She's like, hey, I just need to talk. And I'm like, is everybody okay? I'm like, immediately, I'm like, we're going to go just first tell me, is anyone in the hospital? Is anyone on the way to the hospital? Is anyone dead? Like that's like first three things. And then you can give me your, whatever your spiel is. But yeah. So not living near family. That's
so hard. Especially, and now thinking about like when we moved, there was a part of me that was really excited to kind of have that little break, because up until we moved, we lived like,
7 minutes
from my parents. And we have such a good relationship with my parents, and like they're so helpful with the kids, and that was something that I definitely didn't take fully into consideration in moving across the country. But it also felt like, I was just spending so much time with them that there wasn't a lot of, I felt like they were too involved in everything. Do you know what I mean? Like they knew too much about every fight that we had, or too much about our finances, or too much about things that we were frustrated about. And so it felt like there was this kind of like almost third party involved in our marriage and our life.
You guys had an open marriage with mom and dad.
Right? Yeah. It was like, y'all know too much, so we got to go. But now being this far away, it is like, I think about, we had the kind of like big scare with you that night that I had to call the ambulance when we lived in Spencer. And I was so nervous moving out here that like, man, if something happens with you, with your alcoholism, like I don't have anybody here that I can call. Like everybody is far away. There's no help to hurry and come over to us. So I think that it was like I don't even know why I'm tearing up about it, but it was like, it felt really scary. I don't know. It feels like there were all these things that were happening in this span of a couple years for me, on top of the postpartum anxiety that just kind of created this bubble of like, oh, I'm so worried about everything all the time. But I also can't like show that, because I didn't want you to, I knew you would go to like, oh, I feel bad that she has to worry like that, because you're my husband and you're my partner. And for a while there, it just felt like I didn't really have someone I could like count on, because you were like fighting your own stuff. So
that's why I'm glad that I haven't had like an episode in a while. I've had a couple since we've been here. But none real recently, I wouldn't say, right?
Well, and there's a difference between, I don't love when you have panic attacks, but there's a difference between you having a panic attack and you having like an incredibly inebriated panic attack. Because then it's just like, I don't even know. I don't know what to do. But yeah, and I don't feel like, we had a baby also in May of 21 in the middle of the COVID pandemic, but that was such an easy birth compared to, I feel like we had a lot of stuff happen with Arlo that wasn't great, that I don't think we've ever talked about. But like, do you remember, because you were in the room with Arlo too, right?
The only one I missed was Simon.
The only one you missed was
Simon.
And it was because of COVID. I was not allowed to have another person.
Well, I also had a stupid new job.
Yeah, you did have a stupid new job. That was annoying for sure. But but I
was literally hired for one date, and it just happened to be like the weekend Simon was born. It was like, we are hiring you for this one thing. And then that was great.
But do you remember with Arlo, do you remember when they gave me the, what's the needle
epidural?
In the back? Yeah, the epidural. And I like literally about fell off the fucking table because the guy like hit a nerve. You remember that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very
That was
vividly.
The worst thing I've ever experienced.
I actually had this thought of like, I started to get a little panicked because I'm not making this up. dude came in. Listen, I love gold. But dude came in with like 18 chains on.
And he's like in his probably early to mid 60s.
Oh, yeah.
He had a very young girl, like intern shadowing him or something. And it felt like creep.
Yeah.
It was giving very creepy.
What was the name of the hospital? Or I guess the town.
It was in Bedford.
Okay, I'm trying to like remember.
Yeah.
Bedford, Indiana.
And I definitely remember like seeing him come in, and my first reaction was like, all right, doc, I see you. But then as soon as you let out that yelp, I was like, hey, maybe those chains are a bad sign.
Yeah.
Hit me in this weird way. But
yeah.
I think he, corrected course very quickly. But that was a primal scream.
Oh,
that came from like your pelvis.
It was I was in active labor. That was the worst, like immediate shock pain I've ever felt in my life. Like
nerve pain is like,
like he hit something that about made me fall off the fucking bed.
You see white.
And really like traumatized me so much when I think I wasn't even realizing it. So that when we went in with Simon, I was like panicked talking to those nurses about the epidural because I was like, the last one hurts so bad.
Yeah.
And she was like, babe, those aren't supposed to hurt like that. Like,
yeah,
it's supposed to be intimidating from the needle, but like, it shouldn't have been like that.
Yeah.
But then do you also remember after Arlo came out of me and I was like holding him, my fucking doctor also like announcing to everyone that I was hemorrhaging and I was bleeding all over the fucking floor.
I didn't love that. Yeah.
I also didn't love that. Like, hey, ma'am, could you say that discreetly to someone? Like, hey, get me some extra fucking gauze. Like, why you gotta announce it? Like, because my immediate thought, which almost again, like, I think of these things and I'm like, did this trigger the postpartum anxiety for me? Mm-hmm. Because I did not feel anxious as a person up to having Arlo.
Yeah.
But I had the immediate thoughts of like, am I gonna be one of those women in 2019 that fucking dies during childbirth? Yeah. Like, am I gonna bleed out here? Like, that was so fucking scary to me.
Which is such a shame because your first doctor with Ollie.
Oh, I loved him.
He was the best. Do you remember?
He was so funny.
I talked Kate into letting me bring my my camera after the camcorder incident. I don't know why that Kate let cameras anywhere, but I brought my camera into the labor room.
Yeah.
And your doctor was like, okay, it's going to be about in 2 pushes. We'll step back. We'll give you he was the best.
He was so funny. And then also, this is going to be like a lot. I'm sure Jen's going to be horrified that I'm actually going to share this on a podcast for people here. But I had to get, they asked me if I wanted an episiotomy. Is that what that's called? Which, a side note, I don't recommend them. It's apparently much better and easier to heal if you just don't get that. And if you tear it, and it's fine. Okay, listen, it's fine. My healing after the 2 others was I remember literally the day after having Arlo, I felt back to normal. Like, and Ollie, I was sore for a while.
Is that the only time you got
the only time I got an episiotomy was with Oliver.
It didn't treat you right.
It did not treat me right because they sewed me up, fixed me up after. And then
this is like one of my, it is like totally horrific that you're about to share this, but it is one of my near and dear. I love. Of course, this would happen to you. Apparently what happened, my doctor says, my scar tissue started like protruding out from where my stitches were. And so I started to notice that like, hey man, like something feels kind of weird down there, like on the outside. Feels a little weird, a little funny. And so I go and I sit down and he puts me up in the stirrups and he takes a look and he's like, oh, it's like you got little fingers down there.
Oh my God.
It's like a new growth.
It's so funny. He was like, it basically looked like the top knuckle up was just like sticking out, like waving out of my scar.
like a half blown up like balloon glove.
But there was like,
yeah, dude, like. Like I have my own little like poppet from my freaking.
All right.
Yeah.
So much.
Don't make me put an explicit content warning on this episode also for that.
Fair. He burned those off. It's good. We're all good now. Okay. But next time, just let yourself rip. It's fine. But yeah, dude, he was so great. And then my experience with Arlo was so fucking horrific.
He also delivered your placenta and we didn't even like I don't even think any of us, I didn't realize that even happened.
I didn't know that
like a whole other thing came out and I was like, whoa, what's that? And they were like, she just gave birth to that thing too. I'm like, what is Yeah. That dog
twins?
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just, my birth with Arlo was really not great. So going into Simon, I mean, I'm so thankful because like having a COVID baby really was just like shitty. There were a lot of doctor visits you weren't allowed to go to that was a bummer. I actually don't think you were allowed to go to any of them unless it wasn't like an ultrasound, which we actually used a separate facility for that wasn't at the hospital.
Which for new time parents, that's something I think I would recommend personally is like find a place outside of.
Yeah, dude,
the first time we went, do you remember that? We went to, I think it was in the hospital, but it cost us so much money because they didn't tell you what they were doing. Mm-hmm. They did the transvaginal one. It's like they were
with the giant fucking wand. Was it you I was just talking to I was just talking to somebody else that had to have an ultrasound for something else. I think it was not for a pregnancy, but
like a 12-inch wand.
Oh my God, bro. Like this ma'am.
But I remember them breaking it out.
That they fucking shoved up in there.
Were like in pain and holding my hand and like tears in your eyes. And I remember like
you're like, it's the happiest moment we're about to see the baby. I'm like,
and then it was like, oh, actually we have to use this because the baby's so small we can't even see it. And I'm like, what are you doing then?
Yeah.
What are you even up there for?
It's like something like they ordered it or something like
just
that.
Just to find the heartbeat.
We were first time parents, so we didn't fucking know. We were like, I guess this is normal, whatever. But yeah, I remember that one cost us like a lot.
It was like $1,200. Yeah. And we literally, you don't even get pictures with it. Your baby's like not even a real little thing yet.
So all the other ones we went to just like
ultrasound facilities, like privately owned.
Like they were a little medical park or whatever.
They were way cheaper, even though like I don't think any of them that we went to like took our insurance, but it was still only like a couple $100.
Yeah, $200-$300 I think. But they nice little rooms
and then we got to have the little like plushies with the heartbeats in them for all of them. Mm-hmm. So
did you guys have the option? Like, was it commonly around to get the little like at home things? Because I've had two friends that have had. One of them had a handful of miscarriages, and the other one got implanted. Is that the right place?
Yeah.
And so they just have been like more closely monitoring their pregnancy, and they have like a little at-home thing. And of course, they're not getting like the picture, but they can at least hear the heartbeat and do the.
I remember almost buying one of those with Arlo, but then it was like we ended up not doing it specifically because I thought if I go to use this and I can't find a heartbeat,
you're gonna freak out.
I'm gonna freak myself out. So I'd rather just fucking
goes back to the like I'd rather just not know.
Yeah, back to that whole hey, lie to me, tell me it's fine, everything's good.
I'm actually kind of shocked you even let the doctor find out that you had fingers growing.
Oh, well, I mean,
surprised you didn't let that go on until they were down to your kneecaps.
And that's how you.
Oh my God.
And that's how you know. That's how you know that back then I wasn't an anxious person. I was curious. I wasn't. If that had happened with Arlo, I'd have been like, "Oh, these are tumors. Like something's happening. Something's wrong." Mm-hmm. And I think you even were like, "Hey, what do you do? What are those?"
I think Mom looks at them and everybody was kind of like, I don't remember saying them. But everyone was a little bit like, like,
"Hey, babe, that's a thing.
That's not great."
And for me, I was
Can't Google that.
I was just like, "Well, that's weird," But now I'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. I have a canker sore in my mouth. That's mouth cancer." You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
I wonder how many other women who've had multiple kids, 2 or 3, have had a similar progression as you, as far as like, anxiety or intrusive thoughts and wrapped up with postpartum and all that.
Or I wonder like how many women had like not great experiences either during their pregnancy or during birth, specifically with how their medical team handled them. Mm-hmm. And then also had either postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety a little more intensely. Because I've never actually thought about that until this very conversation.
Yeah.
But I just genuinely was not an anxious person. I did not feel stress ever.
Confusingly so.
And it was like overnight. It was like overnight, all of a sudden, I don't even want to fucking ride in a car. Like, all of these terrible intrusive thoughts came in, and it's like, I just wonder if any of that could be tied at all back to that specific birth experience. Yeah. Because also remember, we fucking went to the hospital to get induced for that fucking pregnancy, drive there. Mind you, this hospital was like an hour and 20 minutes from our fucking house. We get there at 11 o'clock at night and they're like, oh, we don't have a bed for you. And and you were like, what the fuck do you mean you don't have a bed for her? And they were like, you're going to have to come back in the morning. And you're like, I'm not going to bring her back in 12 hours. We just drove all the way here.
Yeah.
And one of the nurses got shitty with you. She was like, well, what do you want me to do? Put her in a closet? And we're like,
I forgot about that.
Oh, do you remember?
It's
Dude,
like all
you were
coming back.
So pissed. And I was like, be nice to them because they're going to deliver my baby. Like, I was afraid that they were going to like.
I guess it's like, no, but you can put someone else in one. Like, like someone's got to be on their way out. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
Put her in a wheelchair, have her hold her baby, put a nice light in there. Like, someone will be.
And what was so shitty about it too was like, I had called the night before to like confirm like, hey, you guys still want me to come in, right? Because there was this little bit of like, hey, there's a lot of women that have due dates close to yours. So like I had some high blood pressure towards the end of that pregnancy with Arlo, and I was going down and getting like weekly fucking ultrasounds. And so that's why they were like, well, we'll go ahead and just induce you a couple weeks early, which I only ended up getting induced like a few days early. But then, we show up and they're like, oh, yeah, we don't even have a fucking bed for you. I'm like, I think it took a couple hours. It was after midnight before I got put in a bed. So we like me, giant pregnant, so sad, fussy, you're pissed.
I don't do well in those type of situations because I
that first room they put us in, you pushed like 2 plastic chairs together
to lay down.
I'm sure I have a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And that was the fucking bitch of it too. Because we were there and you were driving there from Nashville. I'm like, my sister is coming here. Yeah. She's driving 4 hours. What do you want me to tell her to do? Get a fucking hotel room?
Right.
Like, no, that was so shit.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of like, we're working with you guys, because I guess technically we could choose another hospital if we wanted to. So it's like, we chose you guys. We chose the doctor that will be coming here. This is like, I feel like when you have a child, that like 24, 48 hour period.
Yeah.
You are supposed to be the royalty of.
Well, you don't want to feel like you're catching someone with their pants down. And when you show up and they're like, we don't even have a space for you. It's like, do you have a doctor?
Hey, you had like 9 to 10 months to prepare for this, right? Yeah. That's the way I felt about it.
Also, funny enough, they didn't have a fucking doctor. Yeah. So then it was like, my doctor fucking rushed in the room at the very end. And I'm like, and then I'm trying to think if she was even my actual doctor.
That's what I was going to say.
I don't think she was.
Didn't we have one? Yeah, where there was like an audible called at the end. Because I feel like I don't remember if it was Simon or Arlo. Yeah. But I do remember feeling like.
No, it was definitely
Arlo. Why did we even choose a doctor if you're the one delivering?
So I've never met this woman. She comes in. Yeah. She's not actually being very fucking nice to me and then announces to the room that I'm hemorrhaging. Like, ma'am, please leave. Exit.
Have some anxiety.
Damn.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting about that? And I think like really super unfortunate. It's just like the healthcare system in general and like moms and the mortality rate and especially like, I mean, we are privileged, at least that we don't fall in the category of like women of color who have a much higher mortality. I mean, that whole system is so broken for women to feel safe, taken care of, to have a calm pregnancy and delivery. And it's just like in general, it just feels like, I get that you can't plan when a kid's going to decide to come out, but mom had a terrible delivery story when
Oh my God, man.
Have you ever heard the story when she had me? One, her doctor definitely wasn't there. And they thought that they had their pants so far down around their ankles.
I can't believe mom and dad didn't sue that hospital. We would have had a much different life because they would have won.
They literally thought she had been like numbed. They started cutting into her. So mom was like, I literally knew what it was like to be stabbed. Like,
literally cut her ass open and she starts screaming because they had not given her any numbing down there. Nothing.
Yeah,
like,
that's a lawsuit.
Literally.
Yeah, C-section. It was like
my mom was just like, everybody's so Sue happy. I'm like, bitch, sometimes you should. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So anywho.
Yeah.
So then I felt, like back to the email, I felt like read that and related to it. And then the stuff with the sibling obviously is I read that and then I had to read it again. Like I couldn't, because we just didn't have, we would obviously like bicker, banter, or whatever, or like intentionally kind of get on each other's nerves. But we were never cruel to each other. We never did things to like really humiliate each other outside of like me telling boys that you said they were cute on the phone. You know what I mean? Like, which is, I mean, I know that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But like truly like we didn't like
cruel,
degrade each other.
No.
You never had your friends come over and like,
you razzed each other,
like,
but
be
you never
mean
tried to
to me.
destroy each other. Yeah.
No, I think that's like that's something that's incredibly hard for me to even like wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even and to be on the receiving end of that, to like to inflict that on someone else, but to be on the receiving end of that and grapple with like how someone could do that. That's really, and be cavalier about it on top of it.
Yeah.
Like that's really sad.
The thing that I thought was like, he said like, oh, it's something we agreed to. And it's like, I've had to struggle with that myself. It's like, did I agree to things in my past? It's like, but you're a fucking kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the whole consent thing is like, yes, but also no.
Well, that's like,
so that's where from a similar but also not situation, it's like I've had to kind of tell myself that I was a kid. There was no truly understanding of giving your acceptance to say, I'm going to do this. Like, yeah. You go, I feel like looking back as a kid, there's so much that you can go along with especially when either an older sibling or a parent or an uncle, whoever, kids are malleable, so I hope there is some time to forgive, and not even forgive. That's not the right term, but like absolve yourself of that feeling,
right?
Of feeling that guilt.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of similar to how I responded to him. Because I remember when I first reached out to the person that did what they did to you, one of the first things that he said was like, well, we were both kids. And I'm like, no, you weren't both kids. Like, you were 6. This person was not 6. They weren't 8. They weren't 10. Like, they weren't 12.
Yeah.
Like, there's a very different situation when when this person is saying, I think he said that he was 7 or 8, and the brother that did this with the friend was 10 years older. Mm-hmm. They're still technically a kid.
That's old enough.
But you know why you're laughing. Yeah. You know why you're making this person do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it's so normal and natural as a younger sibling to want your older sibling to think you're cool, or to think that the older kid in the neighborhood thinks you're cool or will go along with things or whatever. And so you'll do a lot of things that maybe you don't want to do because you're not trying to seem like you're a baby, or of course you wouldn't do it because you're chicken. And it's like, that shit can be so manipulative. And those are tactics that like, I look at older kids and I'm like, these older like teenagers, and it's like, well, you can use those against little kids to get what you want them to do far easier than, a 7-year-old could do to another 7-year-old.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Sure. Like, I just think that that's like when I reached out to the person with you, I think that was such a quick way for him to try to absolve himself. Like, well, we were both kids. And I'm like, actually, no, you fucking weren't. So, and you knew you were in a power position, and you knew that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so yeah, I don't know. That was like one of those moments again, where I hope I responded in a way that like made sense and didn't just come from a place of, for me, I was just like immediately kind of fueled by like some anger whenever I read that part of his story. Mm-hmm. And I tried to like be thoughtful about the way that I responded to it. But it is just, I think that that's really hard and sad. And I can't put myself into a headspace of thinking that that was something I could do to anyone. But I definitely could never imagine like you and a friend doing that to me, or making me do something like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think it's also interesting, like he doesn't, unless I missed it, he doesn't go into detail about like how that, it seemed like that came up on his brother's podcast or something.
I don't. Yeah,
don't know if it's that,
when
or
I
if
read
it's
that, I
something
don't know if
similar.
it was that or if it was something else.
But it's almost like, ooh, you get his name out of your mouth, like
Yeah.
like about anything.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like until there's a proper apology made, there is no storytelling.
Well, and like how hurtful to realize that realistically after all this time, like he might not be sorry because he's still making jokes about, if not that humiliating thing, some other humiliating thing he made you do. Like that fucking sucks. That fucking sucks. And that's where like, I don't ever want it to come off like we're telling people what to do or what they should do. But if that was me in that situation, I could really confidently say I would absolutely be stepping away from that relationship. Like if someone is not, if I'm bringing to the attention, like, hey, you did something that really hurt me, and you're not only like not acknowledging that, but you're also still laughing about other shit you did. I'm like, oh, nope.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be done. I'm going to walk away. So that was really hard. I hope if you even wanted to have a conversation, that you're able to get some sense of what to do moving forward with the relationship. I think that your brother would let you know through his response what the best course of action is after that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then what was the there was one more thing
The pets.
in that story. The pet thing hit, especially whenever I was reading it thinking about you.
This is so hard. It's so hard too, I think, when you thinking like they've left kind of like the support system of a family, even if every family has stuff, but like some families have more stuff, but it's still like there is some comfort of like the known versus the unknown. And so you have the support system, you move far away, you get pets. The pets can really become like, for some people, like a very big support system. I think they are just inherently, nurturers. They absorb kind of our energy. But I mean, I know living even in Nashville, a lot of nights, like if I didn't feel like going out and hanging out with friends, it was like Benji was my company. Benji did like all this stuff with me, my little dog. And so, yeah, I mean, that loss, it's a loss where it's like that unconditional love. And I think Dad, has told us, you've mentioned this before, like if you have 2 or 3 good friends when you get older, like you can count yourself lucky. And it's like, I mean, when you really think about people who unconditionally love you, or the closest we can get to that in like with our human nature.
Yeah.
It's like, man, if you get a taste of that, even from a pet, it's like that. I mean, that is heartbreak. That is heartbreak on a level that I think people who aren't animal people, like they can't really understand it. I mean, we have a grandma who just like doesn't get really the pet thing. Like,
yeah.
And I don't know, that's like heartbreaking to think that like they both too.
Yeah. My my mom listens to this podcast. Hello, Teresa.
Ooh,
and she'll be so tickled that you're on here. But she mentioned she was listening to the episode where we were talking about Dexter and my dad and him like talking to the dogs.
Yeah.
And she was listening to that part of the podcast. My dad walked by and heard what I was saying about it. And shouted out that he still, every time he walks down there, he says hi to all the dogs now. Because now Dexter's there, Benji's there, Molly is there. Like all of the dogs that have passed recently that Dad has put down there.
Was
like
Watson down there?
Watson's down there. Gosh, which Watson's grave had to be about the size of a human grave. That dog was massive.
Big boy.
Well, I think that's like it's the gift of having a pet, and you have such affection for them and you feel so loved by them, and that like you're the best part of their day. You know what I mean? And it's, so I think like for, mom and dad and for a lot of animal people, they are a part of your family 100%. And when they are gone, you feel that loss. And yeah. No, I mean, I could even talk. I could barely talk about Benji for a long time. But I could definitely not talk to Dad.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, you could just, and Mom would like, I'm used to Mom's emotion because she is she and I are more similar, and we've definitely seen mom cry.
Yeah.
Even from like when we were younger. Dad was like, I haven't seen dad cry that many times. And so if he starts talking about one of the dogs and his eyes start to get all like, well, I'm like, nope.
You gotta stop it right now.
Yeah. So I'm like, you gotta grieve yours. I gotta grieve. We cannot talk about Benji. We cannot talk about like.
I wonder what it is. It's like, I'm sure it's like this for everyone, but you know that old classic trope of like the dad in the household is like, we're not gonna get that dog, and then they get the dog, and then a week later it's the dad's best friend.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something to that, and like, you know, men typically don't express themselves like women do, or don't say the same quantity of words in a day that women do, or have other male friends that like give them that affection. So I wonder if there is something to a puppy that it's like, I'm going to force you to break down this wall, and like, I'm going to be sweet and cute, but you don't have to like, you can just receive it. Like, you know what I mean? You can just take it in, and you can quietly let your guard down to yourself. I don't know.
Yeah,
I wonder if there's something like that. Because I also, when I know I mentioned it on the podcast before, that when Gibson left, that was like, I've had so many, cousins and family members around me die. Again, not my mom or my dad or anyone in the close circle yet, thankfully. Yeah. But I do feel like in my family, I've had a lot of death.
Mm-hmm. You have a big family.
I do have.
I always said family. I was like, is Logan related to everyone in Spencer?
Kinda.
It'd be
not
like
me.
Thankfully we should clarify. Not related.
This episode's brought to you by Ancestry.com.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But I do remember, that day after, or that evening after I had to bury Gibby, when it kind of started sinking in. Even to this day, it's one that I think about most frequently. It's the one that I feel the most sentimental about. I feel like in the long run has hit me the hardest, and it was a dog. Mm-hmm. But it was an energy that was there with me in my private times.
Well, he was safe. He didn't hurt you. He didn't
he wasn't going to backstab me or whatever. Like he was going to be there. The worst he could do is chew up some of my mom's shoes. Like that's all he really did.
You don't care about those shoes anyway. Yeah. So
dumped on the floor a couple times, like any dog. But like other than that, like he was good for cuddling, and it didn't matter, the cliche. It didn't matter what my day was like. He didn't care. And I think that's a strong thing. I think there's a reason humans have had, pets forever, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, the Egyptians love their cats. It's like there's something to that companionship of a different species. Not even just dogs or cats, but other things that you can. Well, okay, even plants. I know some people love to surround themselves with greenery, knowing that they are nurturing this thing and giving this thing life. And people talk to their plants. People sing to their plants. So even that, I bet there has to be some sort of positive psychological effect to having some sort of energy that you feel is giving back to you in a positive way. But I'm not a scientist in that way. Yeah. I hope. That'd be great if you find out there is some like positive link between that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But I know you're on your, I don't know where you're at once Ezio leaves. And I feel like you're going to say no dogs for a while, which was so weird. Again, it's such a 180.
I was always the dog person. And then I think we just had so many babies, and like me being home with the babies and having to take care of them. Yeah. It's like a dog is now another thing for me to take care of and look after. And then in the moments when like, oh my God, we can get away for a minute, we can take the kids and go do something fun. It's like, okay, well now I have to figure out what to do with the dogs.
Yeah.
So it's like, even though the kids will be a little less like on me as they get older, then I really want to travel. Then I want to be able to go do stuff with them and like do cool shit. And I don't want to have to worry about finding somebody to like watch the dogs or feel bad that I'm leaving them all the time. So I think I just want to go into a season of being able to like really do what we want to do and not have to worry about anything that's living outside of our core 5, you know?
Yeah.
But I think once the kids are bigger, maybe, or I don't know, I'm sure you fucking show me a really cute puppy somewhere and I'll break down about it. But I've just been in this season of like, I need nobody to ask me to clean up another fucking mess, please.
Okay.
So when Etsy sheds everywhere, I get mad. I'm like, this fucking dog.
It's not his
But
fault.
I know, gosh, he's got such a sweet little face. You know,
Yeah.
it's fine. Ugh. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to touch on, because I thought it was interesting, is the workplace stuff that he was talking about. Because the way that I read it, if I read it right, it's like he had kind of a toxic workplace, and then he took on a different job, but is finding that he would almost prefer to have the toxic workplace, but work with friends and people that he really enjoyed.
Yeah, I didn't take it. Is
rather
he working
than-
like more alone now or
Maybe
remote?
it didn't like go into specifics, but you haven't had a lot of experience with workplaces because you worked for your dad and then for yourself, and then now you're like in your current workplace. And so I don't like feel like we have a lot to contribute to that conversation, but I know that you've had your job has been so cool and that you've been able to work with so many people, and it's like such a kind of project-based job that it feels like you probably have experienced far more like toxic situations than us, and kind of how to handle that, or if you felt like when you had stepped away from those jobs, but maybe when you were teaching, it was like maybe a less toxic workplace, but there were struggles in other ways, or maybe that also was toxic as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it's like, I mean, having a job is like by nature, I just think about like a group project in school. And I'm going to tell you, nothing I hated more on a syllabus was anything that had a group project associated with it. Because it was like.
That's funny because you're the name everybody wanted on their list. All right.
They're like, she going to do all the work. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think by nature, a work environment is just. It's kind of like, it's just waiting for something bad to happen, right? Like, it's like, unless you have people at the top who are very like proactive and thoughtful about managing relationships, and they want to manage relationships, and they want to, I mean, it can just get bad fast. And I have definitely had the weirdest resume in like, in the best way. But I mean, I've worked for really large corporations. I've worked at a university that was, I mean, very different than I've worked on freelance teams all over the country. I mean, I've just worked in all of these different scenarios, and I've worked with a lot of different personality types. In the entertainment industry, you deal with a lot of personality types. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that when I hear that, I immediately think like most jobs have some level of just like, ugh, about them. But then there is like, when you start talking about toxic, it's like, it's a pendulum, right? I mean, it's like, it can be a little bit, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
And I've had jobs where I've been sexually harassed. I've had jobs where I've been like really sexually harassed. I've had jobs where I've been, harassed by parents over the grades I gave their kids. And like, that was just more like verbal harassment. But I mean, it's been all over the spectrum for sure. And I think that the thing I latched onto in that email was, God, if you can work with friends, it really is like, dude, it's the best. It's the best deal, because unless the environment is like really bad, there is just such a comfort of having that community, because you spend so many hours at work.
Yeah.
And I have been both blessed and like a little bit cursed in the way that like once you have it, you only want it that way. But I worked freelance for so long that I just worked with my friends. Like we hired the people that we liked to work with, that were good at their job. And we all got along because we were cool hangs. Yeah. And we cared about our job. Yeah. And so it was like the best way to do a group project. Right. Because you were like hand selecting the team you were working with.
Yeah.
And so if you do that, it really doesn't matter if your client's like a total nut, or goes to hell in a handbasket and there's a tornado rolling through your shoot set, or like whatever. It doesn't matter, because you're at least with your friends. Yeah. So I don't know. And I think like it also, depending on what type of work environment you're in, like I've worked in a lot of environments that were really stressful for someone who, probably stressful for anyone, I guess, but like especially someone like me who like just really wants to do a good job, and when so many things are out of your control, you're like, oh, but I could have got that one other thing better, you know?
Yeah.
So I've also just really needed to rely on my team because I needed to know that they were, you know, everything was going to go okay, especially like on a live shoot. You have to like trust the team you're with. So
I can't even imagine that.
do like a live shoot. Yeah. Right. Uh-oh. Yeah.
Do you think the team on the Love is Blind finale that they did live, do you think that team was probably having their worst nightmare?
I'm trying to think. Oh, when all the technical issues happened.
When it was supposed to happen. And then it was like hours and hours and hours late. And then it actually just ended up not being live.
Dude, somebody definitely was like in the bathroom throwing up. Like having like just like, yeah, I know that was painfully bad.
It was so bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it was on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a live premiere of some kind.
Yeah. It was like the first time they'd ever tried a live thing.
And then they had like people that they had like asked from previous seasons to go on like Twitter and like kind of like, I don't know, moderate or whatever. And like, and they were like, we don't know what to say. Like,
yeah, it was,
it was so uncomfy.
It was really fun to watch it though. Like as it was happening. I was all over TikTok that night because people were like live streaming it, you know?
It was funny.
And people were more like just the more hours that passed, people were like, is this literally happening or is it not happening? Like,
also that was just like really bad choice on their end. Like there was
like
no
some
reason
people it was working in like certain areas, but then not working. So then they stopped making it work for those people too. It was, oh my God, such a shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not even what this podcast is about, but
no.
But yeah, I just think that like, I know that you have talked about your job a little bit with me, but I am excited about the idea that like we actually are going to be like working on something together that we've also never done, but because I'm so interested to hear about like your job and all the things that you've done and the stuff that you've experienced, because I feel like a lot of times I'll catch like the quick, oh my God, listen to this things, but I'm sure there are also like thousands of things at this point. You're like, I literally can't even retell you what has happened. I'm just like over it. I can't talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like funny. Like if you work freelance, there isn't like really no mundane routine thing.
Yeah.
So it's not like, it's like, oh, every day, like 80% of my day is going to probably be the same. And so there's like not much to share. It's like, no, there's usually something ridiculous going on somewhere.
Yeah.
But and then you work long days, like 12 hours. And then if you get on like a music video set, like those things are like overnight shoots. And that's like when, you know, hell in a handbasket. Like it's like, oh Lord, here we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like so many things pile up. And then if you don't talk to somebody for a few days, it's like, did I tell them that thing? Like, I don't remember what day it is. Like, I don't know. So yeah, I think it'll be funny just to see like what kind of surfaces or stories resurface.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because there were a couple of times when I lived in Indiana that you were able to hire me to work as like a PA for different things. Cause Jen's had a really cool job for a long time. Yeah. So we'll just let you kind of scroll through kind of your job journey.
Yes. I'll give it I went to Nashville to work specifically on music videos. Which is very niche. My major was almost music videos because you could make your own major at IU at the time. That. Which I'm like, thankful I didn't do that. But anyways, I went to Nashville, kind of stumbled into this opportunity to take photos on set because people didn't have social media teams at the time. It was like, because I'm old. And so
67, right?
67, yes. So I would like go, and I had a camera, and I like was self-trained. I mean, I always had a camera growing up. Like that's what I spent my allowance on, was film. And so I like knew my way around a camera. I had taken senior pictures for like a handful of people, but suddenly I was
Logan.
Yeah,
I did. I took
baby.
I had the classic guitar on the back down the train track.
Yes, you
Come
did.
on,
yeah, you did.
Oh yeah, we'll have to find some of those.
Yeah. And so I like knew my way around a camera and was interested in photography, but basically stumbled into like a bizarre scenario where it was like, hey, we have all these like really famous people coming on set and you have a camera and you could do BTS. And then the record labels were like, hey, can we get those photos? And it was, so suddenly I was like photographing famous people.
I remember the first one that you sent to me that I was like a little starstruck about was the main guy from Backstreet Boys, Brian
Littrell.
Yeah, when he was trying to do some like solo stuff. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was so freaking cool. And then you did something with Leanne Rimes and had her like sign a picture and gave it to me. And it even had my name on it and it's silver Sharpie.
Oh, damn.
Oh my
Yeah, we got
God.
that somewhere too.
Damn.
Yeah, it's floating around. But yeah.
That's so funny.
And then you got to work with like people that I feel like were like really early in their fame, but like you worked with Carrie Underwood, you worked with Taylor Swift, you had a music video.
Taylor Swift did a video in your apartment.
Yeah,
That's
with Kelly Pickler.
That's what I'm saying. Like weird things have kind of navigated their way through my
right.
through my work situation. Yeah, we had that was the best because it was a video. Taylor Swift, Kelly Pickler, and they had this the storyline. Like there was this apartment, and it was like the trashy girlfriend and it was like all like the just bad furniture and the bad design and they used all of our personal furniture and and then
we're doing what we can, okay?
And then the art department brought in like a whole literal new like set for like the nice apartment and the nice girlfriend. So that's fine. It was Kelly Pickler's. It was called Best Day of Your Life. So I think it was like if you had stayed with me, like I had the best day.
The best days of your life. Yeah.
I remember
and you know what's
that.
funny about this?
Yeah,
I have like
funny.
the worst memory, but I swear at the time, I need to go back and like Google this. I think Kelly Pickler had like a really weird animal, like a niche, like not like a small monkey, but it was like some weird animal that was in my bedroom.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh.
I remember that Taylor Swift left a hair extension at your house. I remember. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah. And you're like, Kate, it's one of Taylor Swift's hair extensions. You should have kept that shit.
Yeah, I was like,
That's hysterical. I don't even remember that.
Oh, yeah. You could have sold that thing.
Yeah.
Probably just ended up in the trash. Foolish.
That thing's worth millions.
Taylor, send us another one.
So we did, So a lot of weird things can happen. Honestly, listen, there's a lot of weird stories to share if you have, a possible monkey in your house. I don't remember what it was, but I did that for a bit. What else did I do? I quit that.
You did commercial stuff for a while too.
I did commercials.
Yeah, you did
Super Bowl.
CMTs for a bit, right? Like you would.
Oh, like the red carpet.
Did you literally interview on the CMT red carpet one year?
It was not the CMT awards. It was two different awards. E Network called, and they wanted a field producer, and I was like, oh, I can be a field producer. And then I was like, so who's your host? And they're like, oh, we didn't hire a host. And I'm like, well, I'm not a host.
They're like, baby, yeah, you are.
Baby, yeah, you are.
Actually.
And listen, they put me on the red carpet. I mean, awkward.
It'd be like putting me on a red carpet. Like, no, dude.
Well, I didn't know who anybody was. That was like the like hilarity of me working in the entertainment industry. I didn't know who anybody was.
Yeah.
I do remember you calling me after that though, and you're like, Kate, Nicole Kidman is like scary pretty in real life.
I was like, it's like ethereal. It's like doesn't even make sense. But they didn't give me anything. Like
that was like Moulin Rouge days.
Yeah.
She was like popping at that moment. You're like, I saw her.
Yeah. So they literally, oh my God, that might be one of my favorite like work stories. But that job, I didn't know at the time what standard practice is to give someone like, hey, here's the book of all the people we know are coming, so that you like know when they come down.
Not caught off guard.
Yeah, when they come down the red carpet, you like know who they are. And that was like right when Wiz Khalifa came on the scene. And I was like, who's that guy? And they're like, Wiz. And I'm like, what? I don't even know how to say the name again. Like, but there was a girl next to me who actually like did it for a living. There was even like the actual people. Like they're like the people you'd recognize. I mean, I don't know what their names are, but like
the actual reporters, you mean? Like the actual journalists?
I remember I went and bought a fancy, this is so funny. I went and bought like a really fancy outfit from Nordstrom and like kept all the tags on and then returned it afterwards. So I didn't have anything to wear. Like if they were like wearing like fancy gowns and stuff. But this woman like lost her shit when Nicole Kidman came down. She's like, I watched Moulin Rouge. She stepped out on the red carpet in the middle of the red carpet. She's like, I watched Moulin Rouge last night. You're just so, and Nicole Kidman literally left the red carpet.
Oh.
Yeah, dude, it was bad.
How dare you say that that's your favorite work story and not the one that I got to PA on where there were cats in the walls?
Okay, that's actually what I was going to say. So this is like how like you could miss out on a handful of really great stories. Kate, we were shooting, I think it was in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I feel like even worse. I mean, Kentucky's fine, but we were, what I'm about to say is really bad. There were a lot of cats in this house. So many so that they were in like kitty prison. Remember, we walked in the house and the smell of ammonia was so strong that you were like, your eyes were burning.
Oh, yeah.
And in typical practice, what you're supposed to do is like, it's called a location scout, where you like go and you like make sure that people have power and that they don't have, 100 cats locked in a jail in their basement. But our client was providing the home. And so we were just supposed to show up and we'd film the stuff, whatever. Well, when you walked in the house, it was like, oh my God, there's a lot of urine in this house. And other than one cat turd on the floor in the kitchen, there was no sign of a cat. There were no litter boxes. There were no kitty cats.
Yeah. And it was weird.
It was weird.
I vaguely remember this. Yeah.
And then we went down to the basement and we opened the doors for something, and it was like kitty jail. It was just like all these like racks and cats. And then there were like they had those ceiling tiles that are like almost like in the high schools,
like the drop ceiling.
Drop ceiling, yeah.
There's like a cat, like we heard one. Dude, there
was literally like a wall vent and a cat came up to it and we're like, that thing is in the walls. Like it was the weirdest.
Hey, we're here to shoot a music video. This isn't Hoarders. Wrong show.
That was wild.
Yeah, that was
I wonder truly how many cats were in that house.
Hard to say.
I mean,
and then the woman called us after and she's like, how did this shoot? And we were like, what do you even say? We had to leave early.
Like, well, man, there were a lot of cats, so that would have been nice.
I'm like, are you okay? Because like that can't be good to breathe that air.
Oh yeah,
it's not good for anybody.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't think so.
But yeah, so I have weird work history.
Yeah,
and why it's important to work with friends. Because like, listen, if you're gonna be in like cat purgatory, you want to be there with your friends.
Yeah,
you don't want to be there with like Joan down the hall who eats with her mouth open. It's like, I need some like my folks around me.
Mm-hmm. I need somebody else to look around and recognize how absolutely fucking absurd this is.
Yeah.
Not normal. This is great.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. My boss now. So I'm trying to think when that was. It was the day that Trump got elected. Because do you remember I was sick? Or maybe that was a different job that you came out with me on.
It was a different job. The one when the night that Trump got elected was a different job. I had gotten sick with like a migraine. So I PA'd for like half the day and then I literally went upstairs.
Well, it's because you had also stayed up all night with April watching the election. We went to dinner. I left the client dinner the night before the shoot and was like throwing up.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
I woke up the next morning, didn't know that Trump had won. You had stayed up all night with my boss at the time and told her that she was like a fucking idiot or something.
Yeah, at one point
it was horrifying.
At one point I accidentally said, and these fucking idiots. And she was like, well, that was me. And I was like, oh, yay. Uh-oh. And she doesn't even like people to cuss, which you had told me beforehand, and it just slipped. And so I not only insulted her, but I also said dumb motherfuckers, which I don't even use MF together often.
Yeah.
But I
we were staying in an Airbnb together. It was a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, you like to work with friends and you like to not work with Kate. With your boss. Oh, I'm just kidding.
I need lots of warnings. Okay. I need lots of reminders of what not to say because I will.
I do remember before you left that shoot with a migraine, I think you saved our ass though, because something had happened with our prop stylist or our food stylist, and you ended up doing like food styling.
Yeah. I went to the grocery store and picked out all the foods that would look good.
Laid it out.
Yeah.
Let's listen.
They're like, hey, we need it to look like a taco night or something. And I was like, bet. I knew all the good taco ingredients.
Bet. Yeah. But anyways, my boss now, his profile picture is literally a picture of some photoshopped. It was like a cat from the. It's in reference to that shoot. So when he calls, that picture always comes up. And
That's funny.
Like, yeah, those poor cats. I hope they're okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, before we get out of here, are you going to? You briefly mentioned the project. Are you going to maybe talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah. Y'all are going to hear it here first. But so Jen had this very cool job. Left it at one point to go back to school and teach because Jen is a giver. She's a caretaker. And she was someone that wanted to have a career where she felt like she was giving back and not shooting videos in cat houses. Mm-hmm. But Jen also at the time, she worked in a school system for a few years, right?
Yeah, and 3 years in a private school and 1 year in a public school.
Yeah. But Jen was single at the time and unfortunately, unfairly, it's just really hard to survive on a teacher's salary when you're a single person. You don't have anybody else helping you pay bills in the household. And so that's when you went back into producing in the entertainment industry. And so you've kind of had this on your mind for a while to like have another project where you feel like you can kind of.
Yeah, I feel like for me, there was either like, okay, survive and like be able to pay your bills and feel like financially secure. Important things that people deserve to have,
Unfortunately.
and like some kind of like giving back, because I think the thing for me is we came from a small town where like we were encouraged to go to college by our guidance counselors, and like that was like a thing, but it was kind of like the job options were like very like, hey, here are your 10 career paths, right?
Yeah.
And like for people like us, especially like Logan, like it's like, hey, I don't really fit in that box.
Yeah.
And so I had these like big dreams, and I had parents who were very encouraging of us in the sense of they would lay out all of the like safety parameters of like, hey, like you need to be mindful of this and you need to be mindful of this. But they were never like, you can't do that. Like,
right.
And so I felt like I had enough support to just be like, I can go kind of chase this crazy dream. And so, yeah, I moved to Nashville, and then things just, I had all these doors open for me, and they were opened for me by people who were willing to take a little bit of time, offer me a little bit of an opportunity. And then that snowballed into something else. And so I've always just been looking for like, how do I have a career that I feel really good about the work that I'm doing? And I feel like it matters, and it's giving back to communities, giving back to people who need a platform, who deserve a platform, one of my most favorite projects that I've worked on recently is with the Special Olympics. So like that project was so cool. And I was just like, this is like when I feel like my heart's on fire. It's like, okay, like I'm doing something, and these kids will never forget this experience.
Yeah.
And it just hits a little bit differently than like, and I'm so thankful for the music videos I worked on, the red carpets, all those things. But like, yeah, like the Carrie Underwoods of the world, they don't need one extra nice photo. She has so many photos where she looks like a hot babe. Like she doesn't need one more photo.
Yeah.
And so just trying to find that intersection of like, how do I, as a professional woman, have financial security, have a job that's consistent, and then also like feel like I'm still giving back. And so this idea had kind of come across my mind of like, the thing I know I have is I have access to a lot of really people who have really cool jobs and who have done amazing things and come from entirely different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so like, how do we connect people like that? One, just in a storytelling capacity to be like, how did that person get there? But also like as a support system, as a community, to say, if somebody's really interested in X thing, that they have some way to ask questions, someone who could help them write a recommendation letter, get a recommendation letter, apply for a job, get their foot on a set. And so it was funny, like I had this idea before you guys ever even talked about Broken Youth Club, but I was just like, I can't do that. Like, I don't know how to do a podcast. And that was so like silly because I knew you guys knew how to do it.
Yeah.
I knew you knew how to do it.
Yeah.
But I just was kind of like, I don't know, you just like have a thought and you're like, that'd be like cool to do. And you just like kind of put it on the back burner. And then you guys did your podcast and I was like, this is really amazing what they're doing. And they can still do it and they have their kids upstairs. So like, it must be like, Logan can figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so we started talking, and that's kind of like where the idea kind of stemmed from of how do we provide that community for people?
Yeah.
So we're starting another podcast, y'all. And we are 98% sure it's going to be called The Adventure Club. And we just want to hear about people's big adventures, help people go on their big adventures. And I think also the podcast itself is another example of like, it's a dream for you that felt a little far-fetched, a little uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, like if you want to do something, you just go for it, right? Yeah. You still have a job that pays your bills and does the things. Logan still has a job that pays his bills, does the things. But like, we can do this too.
Yeah.
And maybe someday this pops off and is the only thing we need. And maybe it doesn't, but like it feels good to do it. We do Broken Youth because it feels good to do it. It feels healing for us. And at this point, it feels really important to continue to show up for people that are listening in and writing in to us all the time. Yeah. The Facebook group is so special to us. And so when Jen kind of approached us about this, it was like, why wouldn't we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to bring in people that are in this community that would, benefit from the idea of like having another side community of people that are just helping lift each other up in a way of like, go after those big dreams, go after those big adventures.
Yeah.
And offer resources to do that. You know, my hope is people can get resources from the guests that we bring on, because that will be a guest-based podcast. And Jen has some really cool people lined up to be part of that. I hope that those guests are able to provide resources, but then also I'm sure we will start a separate Facebook group, and I would love to see people in there also providing resources like, hey, my job's hiring and it's a really great place to work and this is what it looks like. Or, hey, I just heard about this thing over here, or I just got hired on here and they really loved this part of my resume. Like, I would love to kind of just create a community for people so that you can know that you can have a job or a side thing that I don't even want to call it a side hustle, because I don't want it to be a thing where you feel like you have to do it because you can't, you know, you have a job that isn't supporting you enough or whatever. But it's like you can have these also like side passion projects.
Yeah.
And nothing's off the table. You know, if we would have looked at even our lives in high school, like, you would have never thought that you could have had the job that you have now, because living in a place where we grew up in the Midwest, there were, like you mentioned, really kind of like 10 to 15 jobs that you could kind of expect the vast majority of your classmates to go into.
Yeah.
And those jobs are incredible and important too. And I think that, you know, if people really love to do those things, then I am so happy that they love to do that. I think that for you, it was really hard to imagine what you could love doing because nothing fell into those parameters. And so then it was like, well, how do I do my own thing? And then you hustled for a really long time at a job that you didn't feel super passionate about, but it made sense to get us to the next place, you know? And now you have a job that you do really love and you've gotten to like learn all of these new skills from that. So I'm excited to kind of, we're working on a lot of the back end stuff right now. We don't for sure have a date where everything's going to launch. We'll kind of keep everybody posted. We'll hopefully have our socials come up in the next few weeks so people can follow us directly from that. But that'll be a project where Jen and I host, and then Logan will be producing and editing all the things. All the things. And I'm excited to see what happens with it. And if nothing else, it's an extra hour a week that I get to step away from being a mom and like just have time with you, which I don't feel like we get consistently. So yeah. And then outside of that, you know, we'll have guests on most of the time, but there will also be other episodes where we just talk about Jen and I's own personal adventures, which are very different.
And they won't even it won't just be career. Although like, I feel like a lot of the people I'll be bringing on, like their stories tie into their career, and that's how I've crossed paths with them. Yeah. But also just even like, dude, just like life, like we know for sure we get one go at this. One go at this on planet Earth. And it's just like, I am really passionate about like, dude, what like lights you on fire? Because let's get after it, you know? Like that is the big adventure. And if that's being a mom, and some people are like, I want to have 8 kids and I want to, you know, look, cool, let's talk about that. Let's talk about people who are doing that and love that. If that's, I want to travel, let's talk about like, and like also just be entertained. Everything's just so heavy right now. I feel like anything we can do to like uplift and enlighten and just like, okay, like let's just take a breath together. And talk about like good things.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. And congratulations. This is your first, we didn't even do it like a test run.
Oh, thanks.
This is your first on mic experience. I mean,
I did break the in-ear piece. So
she did break an in-ear before we got in here. So we don't have those in today.
Within the first 10 seconds.
Okay.
That's all right. But yeah. So yeah, thanks for being here. This is like cool. We have toyed with the idea of whether or not we would have guests. And this is a fun little intro to that. And we'll see, you know, as this goes on, you know, how we can make that work. It's obviously easiest to do it with family right now because those are the people that come out and visit us. But you know, we would love to entertain this idea more in the future. But yeah, we've been hearing the kids bang around for the last little bit, so we should probably wrap it up. But if you are not in the Facebook group, we would love to see you in there. Highly recommend it. You can just search Broken Youth Club on Facebook. It's a private group, so it's safe space, and everybody in there is really, really great. If you have a story you'd like to sit in, you can send that to mylife@brokennouthclub.com. If you're more comfortable telling us your story rather than writing it out, we do have the hotline. You can leave a 3-minute message on that. Logan will have the phone number on the screen for that because we can never remember it fully ourselves.
We always have it in the description as well. And then also, let's not forget about our decorate a tree thing. Were you going to mention that?
I was going to mention that. I was going to let you mention that because I didn't want to do the whole outro myself.
Right. But we want to make sure that. Oh, do you want to pull up the PO box, or do you just want to put it in the description?
Well, I don't know what that PO box is. Right?
There it is. I don't want to say it and be wrong.
It's PO Box 115, Spokane Valley, Washington 99037. If you want to send in a homemade ornament, or even just an ornament that you see out in public that you think is funny or cute or hits you in a sentimental kind of way. If you would like to send those in, we're super excited to get a little tree and decorate it up with you guys. We are going to
put a couple in here. Just be sure to sign and date.
Yeah, please sign and date the ornament that you send in, just so that we can look back on that and smile like we do at the ornaments the kids have made over the years. And then we're going to live stream opening all of those up on December 3rd. So if you want to mark your calendar for that, that'll be a sweet little thing. We're just going to have some hot chocolate and Christmas music, and we'll have the rest of the set decorated before then because I'm itching to get that going. But yeah, we'll save the tree for December 3rd. So yeah, otherwise I think that's it.
We'll stumble on out.
Yeah. So thanks so much for being here. We love you. We appreciate all the support, and okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.